The battlefield was finally quiet, but it was the kind of quiet that hurt the ears. Smoke drifted in slow, heavy clouds, covering the broken land like a gray blanket. The ground was black in many places, burned by explosions, and pieces of metal lay everywhere. Ships, both human and alien, were scattered in ruins. The war had been fierce, and the earth still trembled from what had happened only minutes ago. In the middle of this destroyed field lay an alien warrior named Ratek. Among his people, the Karen, he was known as one of the strongest. Their species was tall, shaped like walking mountains, with skin hard like stone and eyes that glowed like burning embers. But now, Ratek looked nothing like the legendary fighters he once trained with. He was covered in dust, his armor cracked, and deep wounds ran across his chest and shoulder. His breathing was slow, weak, and painful. What hurt him most, however, was not the injury, it was the memory from just moments earlier, when his own squad abandoned him. They had tried to carry him at first. 2 Karen warriors held him by the arms, dragging him across the torn land. But enemy drones were detected nearby, and fear spread among the group like fire. One of the warriors shouted that Ratek was slowing them down. Another said they would all die if they continued to help him. Ratek begged them not to leave him, but they dropped him anyway. The last thing he saw was his squad disappearing into the smoke, leaving him alone to die on enemy territory. Now Ratek lay on his side, staring up at the dull, trembling sky. His vision was fading in and out. He tried lifting his hand once, but it fell back immediately. His body felt like it was turning into stone. He thought about his homeworld, about the mountains where he was born, and about the vow he had taken as a warrior. No comrade shall ever be left behind. The words burned him now. Not because he had failed them, but because they had failed him. He closed his eyes slowly, accepting his fate. The war had taken everything from him, his hope, his strength, and now maybe his life. But then, he heard footsteps, very soft. Very careful. Ratek opened his eyes again. At first, he thought, it was a trick of his mind, something created by pain or imagination. But then the figure came closer. A human soldier stepped out from behind a broken wall, a man with dust-covered skin, a torn uniform, and a rifle held low. The soldier looked tired, like someone who had fought too long and wanted it all to end. His name was Elias Ward, a simple infantryman with no rank of honor, no medals, and no fame. Just another human fighting a war he never wanted. Elias stopped a few feet from the wounded alien and slowly raised both hands, to show he meant no harm. Ratek stared at him in confusion. Why would a human approach him without a weapon raised? Why was he not afraid? "You're hurt," Elias said softly. His voice was gentle, almost sad. Ratek tried to speak, but only a broken growl escaped his mouth. His throat burned. Elias took one cautious step closer, watching the alien's movements carefully. He knew the alien could kill him with one strong hit if the alien had any strength left. But Elias felt something strange in his chest, a pull, a kind of empathy he thought he had lost long ago. He knelt down beside Ratek, placing his medical kit on the ground. Ratek forced out a whisper. "Why, help me?" Elias paused for a second. He looked around the battlefield, at the bodies of humans and aliens alike. Then he looked at the injured warrior again. "Because no one deserves to die alone," he answered. Simple words. Honest words. Ratek blinked slowly, shocked. His own people, his own brothers, had left him. Yet this human, an enemy soldier, was choosing to stay. Elias opened the medical kit and gently pressed bandages on the alien's wounds. His hands were shaking, but not from fear, from exhaustion. He tore pieces of cloth from his own uniform to stop the bleeding more effectively. He gave Ratek water from his canteen, lifting the alien's head with great effort. "You're going to be okay," Elias whispered, even though he wasn't sure if it was true. In that moment, something changed inside Ratek, a small spark of hope. And inside Elias, something changed to a spark of courage he didn't know he still had. On a burning battlefield where everyone had chosen fear, one human chose compassion. And that decision would change everything. Ratek lay on the cold, scorched ground, every breath burning in his chest. He had never felt so weak, so small, despite his towering form. Pain coursed through his body like molten metal, and his limbs refused to obey him. His eyes, dim and glowing faintly, followed the human who had chosen to stay. Elias Ward, with a mixture of suspicion and disbelief. The alien warrior had fought in countless battles. He had faced predators bigger than mountains, weapons stronger than his own armor, and enemies who would tear him apart without hesitation. Yet now, in this moment, he realized he had never faced something stranger. Kindness from an enemy. Elias crouched beside him, carefully wrapping the torn bandages around Ratek's shoulder. Sweat dripped down his face from the strain of holding the alien's massive arms steady. Every movement was a battle, and every moment brought a new fear. Not for himself, he had grown used to danger, but for the alien before him. "You should leave," Ratek whispered, his voice weak and broken. "If they find you, you will die." Elias shook his head without hesitation. "I'm not leaving you, not like this, not ever." Ratek's glowing eyes widened. He had heard humans speak of loyalty, of honor, of bravery, but he had never truly seen it in action, not in someone outside his own people. And now this fragile human, smaller, weaker, and outnumbered, was risking everything to save him. "Why?" Ratek asked again, struggling to sit up slightly, only to fall back with a painful grunt. "Why help me?" Elias paused and looked. Around at the destroyed battlefield, the twisted metal, the smoke, the silence that spoke louder than screams ever could. "Because," he said simply, "no one should die alone." Not like this, not in silence. Ratek's chest tightened. No one had ever spoken with such calm certainty to him before. His squad had left him, his enemies had tried to kill him, and his own pride had told him to fight until the end. Yet here was a human who had chosen something more than fear, more than orders, more than war. He had chosen compassion. Elias stood slowly, careful not to disturb the injured alien. "We need to get you somewhere safe. They'll come looking, and I can't carry you out here forever." Ratek tried to rise but faltered immediately. His legs buckled, and he fell back to the ground with a thud. Elias cursed softly under his breath, but did not hesitate. He looped his arms around the alien warrior's torso, feeling the impossible weight of his body. Step by step, inch by inch, he dragged Ratek across the broken battlefield. Every sound made Ratek flinch, the distant hum of drones, the crack of debris shifting, the echo of fallen metal. He expected the human to falter, to abandon him like his squad had. But Elias never slowed, he never faltered. His determination was a steady flame in the middle of chaos, and Ratek could feel it even through the pain. After what felt like hours, but was only minutes, Elias reached a ruined storage bunker on the edge of the field. He eased the alien warrior inside, laying him on the cold concrete floor. The bunker smelled of dust and rust, and its walls were cracked and scorched. It wasn't a home. It wasn't even safe. But for now, it was shelter. Elias tore more strips of his uniform to wrap Ratek's wounds, pressing gently to stop the bleeding. He offered water, encouraging the alien to drink despite the pain. "It's okay," he said softly. "Just a little at a time. You're going to make it." Ratek's glowing eyes softened. "You risk everything." "For me?" he whispered. Elias shook his head with a small smile. "Not for you. For the choice you deserve. Everyone else left you. I won't." The alien warrior had never felt this before, awe mixed with trust. A bond that no war could break had begun to form, not through words, not through shared victories, but through a simple act of defiance against fear. Outside the bunker, shadows moved. The sound of human patrols echoed through the scorched earth, searching for survivors and targets. Ratek's heart pounded with fear, not for himself, but for the human who had chosen to stay. Elias could be caught, punished, killed, yet he remained, kneeling beside him, bandaging him, whispering encouragements as if the world beyond the bunker did not exist. Ratek wanted to speak, to tell him to leave, to save his life instead. But something in his chest told him to stay, to trust. For the first time in his life, he realized that strength was not only in battle, in armor, or in weapons. Strength could also be in courage, in kindness, in the quiet decision to stay when everyone else had gone. And in that quiet, painful moment, Ratek knew one truth. He had been saved not just by skill or luck, but by a human willing to risk everything for someone the world had already abandoned. Outside, the wind whispered through the broken battlefield. But inside the bunker, two warriors, one alien, one human, sat together, forming a fragile bond that would change more than their own lives. In the darkness, a promise was made without words. No matter what came next, no one would be left behind again. The storage bunker was dark, filled with dust and the smell of burned metal. Outside, the battlefield stretched endlessly, scorched and broken, littered with debris from ships and weapons. Inside, it was quiet except for the shallow, labored breathing of Ratek, the injured alien warrior, and the steady movements of Elias Ward, the human who refused to leave him. Ratek tried to lift his head, and pain shot through his chest. Every movement was agony, but his pride made him sit up, just enough to see the human kneeling beside him. Elias looked tired. His uniform was torn and dirt-stained, his hands raw from binding wounds and supporting the alien's massive frame. Yet there was no hesitation in his eyes. No fear that would make him flee, only focus and determination. "Why are you still here?" Rotek whispered, his voice hoarse. "If they find you, they will kill you." Elias shook his head. "Not leaving, not this time. Not for you, not for anyone who can't fight for themselves." The alien's glowing eyes widened. He had seen bravery before, fighters who charged without fear, warriors who faced death without flinching. But this was different. This human, smaller, weaker, and unarmed compared to Rotek's strength, was risking everything simply to stay by his side. There was no glory in this act. No reward, only choice. For a moment, Rotek felt shame. His squad had abandoned him without a second thought. His comrades had left him to die on this strange, scorched battlefield. Yet here was a human, a member of the enemy army, choosing loyalty over fear. Choosing life over orders. Elias moved closer, gently placing a hand on Rotek's shoulder. "We need to get you somewhere safer," he said. "I can't carry you out of here forever, but I can get you away from the patrols, at least for a while." Rotek tried to protest, tried to insist that Elias leave him and save himself. But every movement sent waves of pain through his body. The alien realized bitterly that he could not rise alone. His pride, the pride of a Karen warrior, would have to wait. Elias shifted, bracing himself against the alien's massive body. Slowly, carefully, he lifted Rotek into a semi-sitting position. Step by step, inch by inch, he moved through the ruined battlefield. Every sound made them flinch: the creak of a broken hull, the distant hum of enemy drones, the crack of shifting debris. Rotek's senses were sharper than most humans, and he could feel danger coming from every direction. But Elias never wavered. He never stopped. They reached a partially collapsed bunker at the edge of the battlefield. Elias eased Rotek inside, laying him on the cold concrete floor. The walls were cracked and the roof sagged, but it was shelter brief, fragile, and safe enough to rest. Elias tore strips from his uniform, binding the alien's wounds more tightly to slow the bleeding. He offered water from his canteen, helping Rotek sip slowly. The alien's glowing eyes softened as he watched the human work. "You could leave," Rotek whispered again. "I am a burden. I weigh you down." Elias shook his head. "Doesn't matter. You need me now. I'm not leaving. Not for anything." Rotek's chest tightened, not from pain, but from an unfamiliar growing emotion: trust. He had fought entire armies alone, survived predators that could crush him with one swipe, yet he had never known someone would stay just to protect him. Outside, patrols moved through the shattered land. Elias peeked through a crack in the bunker wall. He saw shadows moving, and heard the distant shouts of soldiers searching for survivors. His stomach twisted, but he did not falter. He moved back to Rotek's side, kneeling and whispering quietly. "Stay with me, just a little longer. We'll get through this," he said. Rotek, exhausted and wounded, finally allowed himself to lean against the human. His massive hand brushed Elias's shoulder, not in anger, not in command, but almost in gratitude, a gesture the alien had never shown to anyone. Time passed slowly. Hours or minutes, it was impossible to tell. Outside, danger loomed, but inside, an unlikely bond was growing. The warrior and the human, enemies by war, allies by choice. The world beyond the bunker might have wanted them dead, but in that moment, they were united by a simple truth. Someone had refused to walk away. Rotek's voice, once harsh and commanding, softened. "I never thought a human could be like this." Elias smiled, though tiredness lined his face. "Most aren't, but some. Some are worth remembering." And in the quiet of the ruined battlefield, in the middle of death and smoke, the alien warrior realized something he had never believed possible. Survival was not just about strength, not just about fighting. Sometimes survival came from hope, from trust, from the quiet courage of one human who refused to leave, no matter the cost. And that human, Elias Ward, was just beginning to prove how far one person could change the course of a war. Night had fallen over the battlefield, but it was no peaceful night. The sky was dark and filled with smoke, the stars hidden behind a thick layer of gray ash. Wind howled through the shattered metal of destroyed ships, carrying the smell of fire, dust, and blood. Inside the ruined bunker, the silence felt heavy. It pressed down on Rotek, the injured alien warrior, and on Elias Ward, the human who refused to leave him. Rotek lay against the cold floor, his massive chest rising and falling unevenly. Every breath brought pain, every small movement made him wince. His wounds had been bandaged, but the injury was deep, and the bleeding had only slowed, not stopped. He tried to sit up, but his strength was gone, stolen by the battlefield, by betrayal, and by exhaustion. Elias knelt beside him, his own body trembling from the strain of keeping Ratek safe. His hands ached from the constant pressure of binding wounds and supporting the alien's weight. His uniform was torn and blackened with smoke and dirt. His eyes, however, burned with determination. He refused to look away. He refused to leave. "You could leave," Ratek whispered, his voice hoarse, barely above a growl. "I am a burden. I weigh you down, your army. Your commanders, they will punish you if they find you here." Elias shook his head, ignoring the danger. "Doesn't matter," he said softly but firmly. "You are still alive. You need me. I'm not leaving. Not now, not ever." Ratek's glowing eyes widened. His species measured strength and power, in skill, in the ability to fight and survive. And yet here was a human small, fragile, and weaker, showing a strength that Ratek could not understand. Not strength of the body, but strength of the heart. The alien warrior's mind flashed back to his squad. He remembered the moment. They left him on the battlefield, abandoning him without a second thought. He remembered the betrayal, the burning anger, and the bitter taste of loneliness. And now a human was doing what none of them had. He was risking everything to save him, to keep him alive, without expecting glory, reward, or honor. For a long moment, neither spoke. The wind outside rattled the walls of the bunker, carrying distant sounds of patrols and drone hums. The danger was close. Too close. And Elias's face betrayed a hint of fear, though he did not show it. He knew that one mistake could cost both their lives. Then Ratek spoke again, softer this time. "You could be killed. Why stay?" Elias leaned closer, pressing a small hand to the alien's arm. "Because it's right. Because no one deserves to die alone. Because someone showed me courage once, and now it's my turn to return it. You are not alone, not while I can stop it." Ratek's chest tightened. He had never felt this before, a mix of awe, respect, and something strange he did not yet understand. His mind, usually sharp with strategy and war, felt empty and full all at once. He realized that strength was not always measured in fists or claws. Sometimes strength came from defiance, from loyalty, from the quiet decision to protect another life when everything around you demanded otherwise. Hours passed. The sounds outside grew louder. Footsteps, mechanical hums, and distant shouts of soldiers searching the battlefield. Elias peered through cracks in the bunker wall, his body tense and ready to react. "Don't move," he whispered to Ratek. "Stay down. Just a little longer. We'll get through this." Ratek obeyed. The alien's massive hand brushed lightly against Elias's shoulder, a gesture of trust, silent and unspoken. The human returned the touch with a brief squeeze, a promise that he would not abandon him. A sudden shiver ran through the bunker. Elias's eyes narrowed. Patrols were closing in, more than he had expected. His heart raced, but he did not falter. He reached for his rifle, his fingers trembling slightly as he checked the weapon. His duty to his army, his fear of punishment, his own survival, all of it mattered less than the life of the alien before him. "You are." "Strange human," Ratek said weakly, a small sound of disbelief in his voice. Elias smiled softly, tired and grim. "People tell me that," he whispered. And in that moment, despite the fear, the danger, and the pain, a bond stronger than any war began to form. Two soldiers, once enemies, now united by courage and compassion, sat together in the darkness, each drawing strength from the other. Outside, the battlefield waited. But inside the bunker, in that fragile moment, hope grew. Because sometimes, survival was not about fighting alone. Sometimes, survival was about staying when everyone else had walked away, and Elias Ward had chosen to stay. The bunker was cold, dark, and barely standing. Outside, the battlefield stretched like a ruined wasteland, silent except for the distant hum of patrol drones and the occasional crack of burning metal. Inside, it was tense, every shadow, every sound a potential threat. Ratek, the injured alien warrior, lay on the concrete floor, his chest rising and falling unevenly. His breathing was shallow and ragged, his massive body trembling with pain. Elias Ward, the human who had refused to leave him, crouched nearby. His uniform was torn and blackened, his hands raw from bandage and wounds, and holding Ratek upright. His rifle rested within reach, ready to defend them both. Every noise from outside made him flinch, but he did not move from the alien side. Not once. Not ever. "They're coming," Ratek whispered, his glowing eyes flicking to the cracks in the bunker walls. He could feel them approaching, the soldiers, the drones, the hunters. His own body screamed at him to stay down, to accept the end, but his mind was torn. He had survived countless battles, faced enemies who wanted him dead, yet never had he been saved by anyone until now. Elias's jaw tightened. "I know, and we're ready." The human's words were calm, but inside, his heart pounded like a drum. He knew they were outnumbered. He knew that one mistake could cost both of their lives. Yet he refused to back down. He refused to leave Rotek to die, not after the alien had trusted him so completely. Outside, the sound of footsteps grew louder, closer. The enemy patrols had found the heat signatures of the alien's massive body and the human's small one. They would not stop until they had captured or killed them both. Rotek tried to rise, but agony shot through his chest, forcing him back to the floor. "You could leave. Fight them. Survive," he whispered, a weak attempt to protect the human. Elias shook his head. "No, not leaving. Not today. Not ever. You're alive, and I'll make sure it stays that way." Rotek's eyes widened. This human, fragile and outnumbered, was showing a courage he had never seen among his own species. Strength had always meant power, skill, and ruthlessness. But now, in the shadow of death, Rotek realized there was another kind of strength, the strength to protect someone when everyone else has abandoned them. The soldiers outside shouted, ordering them to surrender. Drones hovered near the bunker entrance, scanning for heat signatures, ready to fire. Elias rose slightly, rifle in hand, positioning himself between the alien and the door. He would fight. He would protect this alien warrior with everything he had. "You will not take him," Elias yelled, his voice echoing in the small space. "He is not your enemy." Rotek tried to respond, but only a low growl came out. His massive hand lifted slowly and rested on Elias's shoulder, steadying the human as if to say, "I trust you. Do not fail me." Elias's eyes met the alien's glowing gaze. For the first time, the fear of death mingled with a fierce determination, and he felt something he had not felt in a long time, purpose. They were two soldiers from different worlds, united by courage, and neither would be abandoned. The soldiers outside hesitated, their weapons trained on the bunker. They had never seen an alien stand beside a human to protect him. They had never seen loyalty that defied war itself. In that pause, Elias saw an opening. He whispered quickly, "Stay down. Let me do this." Rotek obeyed, the weight of his massive body pressing into the floor as Elias raised his rifle. Every second stretched, every heartbeat thundered. Outside, commands were shouted. Inside, two unlikely allies prepared for what might be their final stand. And then, a voice from the alien warrior cut through the tension. "I will protect you too," Rotek said, low and resonant. His massive hands pushed slightly, enough to shield the human, enough to show his resolve. Despite his pain, despite his injuries, the alien was ready to fight for the human who had chosen to stay. Elias felt a surge of respect, of gratitude, of bond stronger than any war could break. "We do this together," he whispered outside. The soldiers exchanged glances, uncertainty flickering in their eyes. For the first time, fear of something greater than themselves, the bond of trust and courage, between two enemies made them hesitate. Inside the bunker, the human and the alien warrior sat side by side, injured but unbroken, ready to face whatever came through that door. Because sometimes, courage is not measured by strength or numbers. Sometimes, courage is measured by refusing to leave, refusing to turn away, and standing together when everyone else has fled. And tonight, against all odds, they would stand. The bunker shook as footsteps and shouts grew louder outside. The patrol drones circled near the entrance, their scanners glowing red. Rotek, the alien warrior, felt his chest tighten with both pain and rising tension. His muscles were weak, his wounds still bleeding, but his mind burned with a single thought. He would not let the human die. Elias Ward, the human soldier, crouched beside him. His rifle was ready, his hands shaking slightly from exhaustion, adrenaline, and fear. He kept his eyes on the bunker door, listening to the approaching patrols. Every sound made his heart race, but his focus never wavered from the alien warrior at his side. "You don't have to," Rotek said, his voice low and hoarse. "Leave, survive. It is too dangerous for you." Elias shook his head, his jaw set. "I'm not leaving. You saved my life once. Now it's my turn. We survived together." Rotek's glowing eyes softened. In his long life, He had fought side by side with countless Karen warriors. They had been strong, brave, and skilled. But never had anyone risked themselves purely out of choice, out of honor, out of loyalty to a stranger. This human, small, fragile, and untrained for heroics, was showing courage that dwarfed anything he had ever seen. The door to the bunker exploded inward. Shouts and the hiss of lasers filled the air. Dust and debris rained down as the soldiers stormed in. Elias raised his rifle instinctively, aiming at the closest enemy, but his hands trembled. Then, a massive figure stirred beside him. Retek struggled to rise, pain shooting through his body, but he pushed himself forward. Every motion was agony, yet every movement was purposeful. He placed himself in front of Elias, his massive arms spreading wide, a living shield. "Stand back!" Retek roared, a sound that shook the walls of the bunker. His voice carried authority, pain, and defiance all at once. "You will not touch him." The soldiers froze. They had never seen an alien act like this, not to protect a human, but with such determined honor. They hesitated, exchanging uncertain glances. Elias looked at Retek, disbelief and awe mixing in his expression. You would protect me?" he whispered. Retek's glowing eyes met his. "You showed me courage. When everyone else left. I owe you life. I will not fail you." Elias's lips curved into a tired, grateful smile. "Then we fight together." The patrol soldiers fired, but Retek's massive frame absorbed the first hits. His body, though wounded, moved with incredible speed and precision. He swung aside debris, blocking lasers, and used his massive arms to knock enemies away from Elias. Each motion was calculated, instinctive, and fueled by determination. Elias, inspired by the alien's bravery, fired with precision. He covered Retek when needed, moving behind him like they were two halves of a single force. The bunker became a battlefield of shadows, dust, and light, where the human and the alien fought side by side. Enemies hesitating to strike at a bond they could not understand. One enemy soldier tried to flank Elias. Retek moved faster than his injury should allow, grabbing the soldier and throwing him aside. Another drone hovered closer, scanning for heat signatures. Retek ripped a beam from the wall and smashed it, short-circuiting the machine. Hours or what felt like hours passed in this standoff. Neither Elias nor Retek gave an inch. Their courage, their loyalty to each other, radiated in every motion, every breath. The soldiers outside began to retreat, realizing this was no ordinary battle. This was something else, something they could not predict, could not control. Finally, the last drone fell silent. The last footsteps retreated, and the bunker became quiet once more. Dust settled over the floor. Retek leaned heavily against the wall, exhausted beyond measure. Elias approached, gently placing a hand on the alien's massive shoulder. "You did it," Elias whispered, voice shaking. "We're still alive." Retek's chest heaved. Pain racked his body, but he nodded slowly. "We survive. Together, always. You showed me hope, human courage. Stronger than war." Elias smiled, tears threatening his eyes. "And you showed me loyalty I'll never forget. You're my brother, Retek." The alien warrior, once abandoned, once left for dead, had kept his promise. He had protected the one human who had chosen to stand by him. And in doing so, he had changed both their lives and perhaps one day, the course of the war itself, because sometimes the strongest warriors are not the ones with the sharpest blades or the hardest armor. Sometimes the strongest warriors are the ones who refuse to leave someone behind. And Retek and Elias had just proven it.